フルカウンター
Alright, so in Rank Frost PvP, your sub-slot character is just as important as your frontline characters. These are units that make the team come together, whether they give you a massive buff or give you other stats that benefit your team greatly. So today, what we're going to do is go through my top 10 picks of the best sub-slot characters to use right now in PvP as of April 2023. Obviously, characters can come out and we can get relics that change this, but these are my top 10 picks. Alright, so at number 10, we have your highest CC character. Sometimes, especially when you're trying to rank up, the most important thing is starting first. No matter what the best character is, if you start second, then you could possibly lose the game. So sometimes you may be using a team that don't really have that many synergies together, and the sub-slot character you want to bring just doesn't work for all the characters. So sometimes it's always just beneficial to bring your highest CC character just to get a mega stat buff, like Margaret for me, for example, just because I need to start first with this team, and if I don't start first, then it doesn't really matter. So even when we go through the list and we have better options to bring, sometimes it's not worth it. Alright, so at number 9, we have your basic stat buffers. So these are characters in sub-slot that just give you a massive stat buff, and we're going to clump them all together. So of course, for the unknown team, you have Ram, who gives 20% basic stats. For Giants, of course, you have the Matrona, any of the Matronas, because she obviously does give you 25% basic stats for obviously Giants if she is in a sub-slot with her relic on. Fairies, of course, do have Hellbrom, who does the exact same Matrona, but at a lesser percentage, and that is 20% base stats for obviously the fairies. You probably wouldn't use a fairy team, but if we do get one in the future, then Hellbrom may be the go-to character. And of course, you got to clump these ones together, and that is the defense and HP buffers. These are characters that are literally essential for the team. There is no better character, but once again, they're limited to one main race, right, or one main color, because we have obviously the defense team with obviously Guild Thunder giving massive defense buff. Literally, no one can replace him. You have to have him, but once again, he's only usable on that team. And of course, it's where you have Twigger, who gives you the massive HP buff if you are a rare character. And literally, there's no better sub-slot character to bring if you are using these type of teams. Alright, so at number 8, we have Festival Zeldas. Now, Zelda's kind of fallen off a little bit, but this is a character up until Nanishi, basically, that gave the highest percentage of base stat in the sub-slot that you could bring for any universal team, as long as you had debuffs on the character. Obviously, the character maxed passive after they have 8 debuffs on, but as the meta has gone on, certain characters kind of fallen out, like obviously Kia, which gave you max passive straight away, but also right now, there are a lot of cleansers, and honestly, better characters to bring now. So while Zelda is definitely still viable, depending on what team you're bringing, you can always still use the character. And even if your team doesn't have debuffs, thankfully, kind of, but not really, we do obviously have this guy, Sario. Sario does give you actually a debuff every single time the character uses skills. So if you need a character with debuffs on, you can always throw Sario. So once again, not the best character, but definitely one still usable. And you see him once a week, probably maybe once a month, but he's still somewhere around. At number 7, we have a bit of a different one here, but one that I've seen used a few times and kind of a little bit niche depending on what team you're bringing here. But we have SR Liz. Now, SR Liz as a character alone is actually going to heal 10% of your max HP every single time you take damage in PvP while in the sub-slot, but she also has a relic that is going to increase all of your allies' HP related stats by 50%, which includes lifesteal. So as a sub-slot character, it's not that bad. I think the only bad thing is that she's obviously an SR, so the CC is not great, and we have a few Elizabeths out there that are kind of better. But depending on what team you're bringing, you've definitely seen them a few times, and even going back towards the actual HP team, like obviously Reinhardt and obviously the mono-human team, she is a rare character too, so you could use her and Twigger together to get a mega HP stat increase if you're just going towards obviously Button or Reinhardt and not bringing someone like obviously Purgly Barn, who we've seen a few times in the meta, but once again, not the greatest character, but at least the goddesses right now, if you're not using Light Liz or obviously Goddess Elizabeth, she might be one of the best sub-slot characters to bring, because there aren't that many for goddesses right now. Alright, so number 6, we have obviously the Ludovicio that came out. While the character is definitely underwhelming, he is a sub-slot character, and there are a few teams out there that do max out his passive. However, you actually rather use him in the front line because obviously he's a goddess, and you'd rather bring someone like Ragnar Bond on sub-slot. But in the future, when we do get more goddesses, maybe he might actually move to the back line. But as it is right now, he's definitely still a frontline unit. But if you are using a team like this, for example, you have Mayo on the front line, which I do not have, by the way, then Ludovicio is going to give some attack rate stats and still be a goddess. So it's overall not the worst, but he's kind of there. He's kind of there. Also, I guess in Joint 6 is going to be Tamiya, once again, kind of going back towards a niche part of the game. And that is the fact that although the character doesn't do anything in the sub-slot, he does buff up stance characters. So basically only Chandler, which you're not really going to use him on the actual Demon team, but you can use him with Green Star Rio. And to be fair, I've seen him in the sub-slot more than Leducio. Leducio probably on the front line, actually. But once again, him and Leducio are probably like the go-to right now if you don't really have a good sub-slot character to bring for Goddesses. Unless you want to bring number 1, which you get to later on. But yeah, that is number 6. Alright, so number 5, we have 3 characters in one here, and that is Omnis the Bezeldris, Demon Chandler, and Demon Cusack. All of them working in the sub-slot, but it depends on what you're bringing and also what you're versing. Demon Chandler being a good sub-slot character if you are versing Archangels, because the Archangels cannot have their stats lowered, so bringing someone like Chandler who doesn't focus on lowering stats, he focuses on increasing your own stats, he's actually a good sub-slot character. Only problem is you cannot obviously bring the original Chandler, and original Chandler being right now being probably one of the strongest demons, especially against other demons, which is what you're finding right now in PP. Right now, there's, I guess in Geared, a lot of demons running around, so Chandler, probably the best one. But once again, if you are versing more Goddesses, that's where Demon Chandler might shine a little bit. But then obviously, you have Zeldris as well, who can work in a sub-slot, that's going to give you attack rate stats, and also lower their attack, which again, you can't do towards, obviously, Goddesses. Once again, maybe when we see more Goddess support, we might see the sub-slots change a little bit here. And of course, we have Demon Cusack as well. Demon Cusack having a really good passive, apart from going up against, obviously, Archangels or the Goddesses that don't obviously lower the stat increase here. But still a pretty good one, attack rate stats. You typically see a team like this running around, where you go 4 AoE and you bring, obviously, a massive attack rate stat buff because you're getting it from Zeldris and also Cusack. So yeah, once again, kind of depending on what you're versing, what you're going for, but you can easily replace either one of these two on, obviously, Demon Chandler as well. Alright, so at number 4, we have Coinshot Merlin. This is a character that came out unreleased, but is still relevant to this day. You don't see it too often, but you know when you do because you have 1 extra orb, obviously. I'm pretty sure the character works. You get 1 extra orb just by bringing the character to sub-slot. She does obviously have an actual unknown increased damage dealt, but the problem is the only team using her probably aren't even unknown teams. But if you want to run something like a team like this, for example, where you're trying to rush Ultimate and do that cringe tech with obviously Ultimate Escon or Purgatory Melee, then just getting the extra orb is always beneficial. And you've seen a few of them teams where they plan to start second to get the extra orb plus the Merlin, so you start off with 3 orbs and you're able to get ultimate turn 2 with 2 different characters depending on what team you're bringing. So once again, Merlin, you still see some type, but not too often, but when you do, it's a little more annoying. You have to deal with it, get ultimate quickly, and a lot of them as well. Alright, so number 3, once again, this kind of goes back to number 10, which is your highest CC character. Sometimes you're using a team that don't really have that much synergy together, and you kind of want to start first. So you bring your highest CC character, which is Ultimate Escanor, but Ultimate Escanor being one of the most toxic characters that bring in the sub-slot, just because the character comes in and just absolutely unreal damage, especially if your whole team gets wiped, you're able to get a tier 3 straight away, and almost one-shot the team. I've lost countless games because this guy in the sub-slot, not to mention if the character is 6/6, you're going to get 4 final flames, so if the character does die, you have to then attack the character 4 more times, and sometimes you can either get Ultima, or you can just get another tier 3, and you can get back-to-back tier 3s and just win the game. Once again, I can't count how many times I've lost to an Ultimate Escanor sub-slot, but yeah, Ultimate Escanor, while he's not the best, probably the highest rank, if you are just going for CC and you want to flex your constellation, just starting first with him in the sub-slot is obviously beneficial, but if you somehow do lose, then this guy can just win you the game as well. Alright, so at number 2, we have Ragnarok Bond. This guy was number 1, but I did change my mind after the last few weeks of the meta turning out to what it is right now. But his character, once again, being universal, the fact that his character can just be put on any single team and just be an absolute way to buff your character attack rate. That's 10% highest we've probably seen. The demons do get a bit more of obviously Zeldris and Cusack, so that's why the character is probably not being used here. But if you're bringing someone like the Archangels, this was the go-to sub-slot character, or even Ultimate Escanor. Crit in this game is literally the silent fact that if you win a lot of times, so to get 10% extra attack rate stats is massive. Not to mention the character also lowers their crit shots and their crit damage, so they're not critting you. So overall, it's just like such a crazy sub-slot character. But if the character does come in and get tier 2, which happened a few times when versing him, the guy can stop Ultimate Rush and could even win you the game. So overall, by far, probably the second best. Was number 1, but was outshined by the god himself, And number 1, we have Nanashi. I'm sure most of you lot probably expected him because he's probably the most used SUBSLOT character right now, unless you're obviously your demons. But his character is able to do so much. He does so much in the SUBSLOT. It's honestly outrageous. But not only does he obviously buff up 30% basic stats for unknown race in the SUBSLOT, which if that was the passive alone, that would be already one of the best. And that's the highest stats we've seen our SUBSLOT character. But not to mention, he has a passive, which people always somehow forget about it. But the character is obviously going to increase your max HP, your crit resistance and crit defense. So if they do crit you, then it's going to do less damage. But also it is harder to crit you because you do have more crit resistance. But also as well, the only bad thing about this is that it only applies on the characters with 2 or less skills. So it's a bit of RNG, but generally speaking, especially at the start of the turn, 2 of your characters are consistently always going to get it. But also the biggest one, and why Goddess is actually using it, and that is just the ultimate drain. Honestly, this is so massively powerful right now because a lot of teams right now don't have drains. I mean, if you look at the Goddesses right now, the thing they're lacking is obviously them being able to drain. And a lot of times I just rush ultimate, and if you have Nanashi buff on, then it's a little bit hard because you have to attack 2 people. You can definitely play around it, but it does catch people off guard sometimes, and you cannot always forget about it. So I think the fact that character is a bit niche and starting to see more play, people are not realizing what the passive does, so you cannot always forget. But the biggest one as well, not only does he buff up unknown stats by 30%, he also increases defense rate stats by 20% if a character has 2 or less skills. And this is kind of why this guy's being used on many different teams. Not only is he giving you more crit resistance, crit defense, draining as well, he's also giving you defense rate stats, which is massively important against big characters. I mean, look at the top 3 characters right now. You have Ultimate Escanor, who if he crits you, it's almost over. Purgatory Medionis, who if he enters true magic, is going to crit you and kind of kill your run. So if you're able to tank it, that's going to literally win you the game. And obviously the biggest one is Mael, where if this character crits you, it's almost game over. This skill does obviously a lot, but then this one has Spike, which does 2 times crit damage. So getting critted by this skill is almost game over. I mean, look at my yesterday's video. It went from like 4k to 30k on my Rumu. Granted, Rumu is really, really bad, right? But critting in this game is massively important, like I said earlier on with obviously Ragnarok Barn. But the fact that you can bring this character to stop critting at least on 2 of your characters reliably is just insane. Alright boys, so that's going to wrap up today's video. Let me know in the comments down below what your top 10 picks are, who you think the best SUBSLOT character is right now. Honestly, I can't just stress enough how important Nanashi is. He makes me win games. It's kind of insane. Also, I do use unknowns, so I have to use them anyway. But generally speaking, if I don't know what to use sometimes, I just throw him in the SUBSLOT to get the AoE drain, to get obviously all the extra buffs that do come along with him. So overall, I think he's by far the best one. I think a lot of people can agree on that. But also, that does depend on what team you're bringing, because if you are a demon, then there are better options, but that's only for demons. So I think how universal Nanashi is just how it is. So boys, thank you for watching, and yeah, peace.